Before we dive into this story, please subscribe to our channel. That would help me a lot, and you can change your mind anytime later. Now let's begin the story. My name is Ryan, and this is the story of how my wedding day turned into a complete nightmare because of my manipulative and vindictive mother-in-law, Diane. It all started a few months ago when I proposed to the love of my life, Emma. We had been dating for 3 years, and I knew she was the one I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Emma is the kindest, most beautiful, and caring woman I have ever met. She has a heart of gold and always puts others before herself. She's a kindergarten teacher, and the way she lights up when she talks about her students always melts my heart. She's also incredibly smart and has a great sense of humor. Whenever I'm feeling down, she always knows how to make me laugh and see the brighter side of things. When I introduced Emma to my family, my mother, Diane, was less than thrilled. She's a wealthy and snobbish woman who thinks money is everything. She immediately dismissed Emma because she came from a middle-class family and worked as a teacher. In Diane's eyes, Emma wasn't good enough for her precious son. Despite my mother's disapproval, Emma and I decided to get married. We planned a lavish ceremony in New York, where we both lived and worked. Everything was going smoothly until my mother started acting strange. She would make snide comments about Emma's dress, the venue, and the guest list. I brushed it off at first, thinking she was just being her usual critical self. Little did I know that my mother was secretly plotting to ruin our wedding and break us up. She hired a look-alike actress named Nora, who resembled her closely, and instructed her to pretend to be her at the wedding. She also bribed a doctor, Dr. Lee, to fake a medical report that said she had a heart condition and needed to rest in a private room before the ceremony. Her plan was to swap places with Nora and sneak out to sabotage the wedding. On the day of the rehearsal dinner, my mother made a big show of having a heart attack during her toast. She was rushed to a private room by Dr. Lee, who confirmed that she needed to stay there until the wedding. Little did we know that Nora was waiting outside, and as soon as my mother was alone, they swapped clothes and accessories. My mother then left the room through a back door and headed to the hotel where the wedding was taking place. As the night went on, I couldn't help but notice that my mother was acting a bit strange. She kept forgetting the names of my siblings and making odd comments. But I brushed it off, thinking she was just nervous about the wedding. Little did I know that it was actually Nora pretending to be my mother. Act 2. As the night of the rehearsal dinner went on, my mother's strange behavior became more and more apparent. At one point, she called me by the wrong name, referring to me as Michael. I was taken aback, as I've been her son for over 30 years, and she's never once called me the wrong name. "Mom, it's Ryan, your son," I gently corrected her, assuming she was just having a momentary lapse. She looked at me with a blank expression, as if she didn't recognize me. "Of course, dear. Ryan, that's right," she said, forcing an awkward laugh. Throughout the evening, she continued to make odd comments and forget basic details about our family. She introduced my sister, Melissa, as Melanie and couldn't seem to remember the names of my brother's children. Emma leaned over and whispered, "Is everything okay with your mom? She seems a little off." I shrugged it off, not wanting to admit that my own mother was acting bizarre on such an important night. "She's just stressed about the wedding, I'm sure. You know how she gets." But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. My mother was always the picture of poise and elegance, never letting her emotions get the better of her. This forgetful, scatterbrained woman didn't resemble the Diane I knew. The final straw came when we were discussing the menu for the wedding reception. My mother, a dedicated carnivore, suddenly announced, "Oh, and we'll need to make sure there are plenty of vegan options available." I nearly choked on my drink. "Vegan? Mom, since when are you vegan?" She looked at me like a deer caught in headlights. "Oh, I'm just trying to be more conscious of my carbon footprint and all that," she said, waving her hand dismissively. At that moment, I knew something was seriously wrong. My mother would sooner give up her fortune than her beloved filet mignon. After the dinner, I pulled my father aside and shared my concerns. "Dad, have you noticed anything strange about Mom's behavior tonight? She's forgetting basic facts and acting completely out of character." My father, Frank, sighed heavily. "Son, your mother has been under a lot of stress lately. This wedding has been taking a toll on her." I could tell he was making excuses, not wanting to admit that his wife was acting bizarrely. But I wasn't going to let it go. "Dad, this goes beyond stress." She called me the wrong name, introduced Melissa as Melanie, and claimed she's gone vegan. "That's not just stress. Something is seriously off." Frank looked at me with concern in his eyes. "You're right, Ryan. This isn't like your mother at all." We should talk to her, figure out what's going on. We searched the venue, but my mother was nowhere to be found. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. The wedding was just hours away, and my mother's strange disappearance had me on edge. Emma tried to reassure me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. We arrived at the hotel where the wedding was being held, and I immediately went in search of my mother's room. I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Growing increasingly worried, I used the spare key and let myself in. The room was empty, with no sign of my mother. Her belongings were untouched, and the bed hadn't been slept in. It was as if she had never been there at all. That's when I noticed a note on the nightstand. With trembling hands, I opened it, and my heart sank. "Sorry, I can't do this. Ryan." Those 4 words hit me like a ton of bricks. My mother had left, and she had taken the wedding rings with her. I rushed to Emma's room, tears streaming down my face. I pounded on the door, desperate to see her, to hold her, to make sense of this nightmare. When she opened the door, her face fell. "Ryan, what's wrong?" I handed her the note, my hands shaking. "It's from my mother. She's gone, and she took the rings." Emma's eyes widened in shock. Before she could respond, we heard a noise coming from the bathroom. The door was locked from the inside. "Emma, is someone in there?" I asked, my heart racing. She shook her head, her expression one of pure terror. "No, I've been alone all morning." I didn't hesitate. I threw my shoulder against the door, again and again, until the lock finally gave way. Emma screamed as the door flew open, revealing a horrifying sight. There, huddled in the corner of the bathroom, was a woman who looked exactly like my mother. She was trembling, tears streaming down her face. "Please, don't hurt me," she whimpered. "I'm not who you think I am." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "Who are you? Where's my mother?" The woman took a deep breath, her hands shaking. "My name is Nora. I'm an actress. Your mother, Diane, hired me to pretend to be her at your wedding." Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "What? Why would she do such a thing?" Nora looked at us with remorse in her eyes. "She wanted to ruin your wedding, to break you two up. She doesn't think Emma is good enough for you, Ryan." My blood boiled at the revelation. My own mother, the woman who was supposed to love and support me, had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to sabotage my happiness. "Where is she?" I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. "Where's my mother?" Nora swallowed hard. "She's here, at the hotel. She's been spreading terrible rumors about you too, stealing the rings, doing everything in her power to make sure this wedding doesn't happen." Emma gripped my hand, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Ryan, we have to stop her. We have to find her and put an end to this madness." I nodded, my jaw set with determination. My mother had gone too far this time, and she was going to pay for her actions. With Nora's help, we began to piece together my mother's twisted plan. It was even more sinister and calculated than I could have imagined. According to Nora, my mother had been plotting to sabotage our wedding for months. She had been consumed by her hatred for Emma and her belief that she wasn't good enough for our family. In her warped mind, she thought she was doing me a favor by breaking us up. "She approached me a few weeks ago," Nora explained, her voice trembling. "She offered me a large sum of money to impersonate her at your wedding and help ruin the ceremony." Emma gasped, her hand covering her mouth in shock. "But why would she go to such extreme lengths?" Nora shook her head, her eyes filled with remorse. "Money, status, power, those are the things that matter most to your mother, Ryan." She saw Emma as a threat to her perfect little world. As Nora laid out the details of my mother's scheme, my blood boiled hotter and hotter. Not only had she hired Nora to impersonate her, but she had also bribed a doctor to fake a medical emergency, giving her the opportunity to swap places with Nora and sneak away. And her actions at the hotel were even more despicable. She had gone around spreading vicious rumors about Emma and me, trying to turn our friends and family against us. She had stolen our wedding rings, a symbol of our love and commitment, and hidden them away like they were worthless. But perhaps her cruelest act of all was locking Emma in the bathroom and leaving that heartbreaking note, making her believe that I was the one calling off the wedding. The thought of Emma reading those words and thinking I had abandoned her made my heart shatter into a million pieces. As Nora finished recounting the sordid details, Emma's eyes were filled with tears. "Ryan, we have to stop her. We have to expose her for the monster she truly is." I nodded, my jaw clenched with determination. "You're right. It's time to put an end to this once and for all." We quickly devised a plan. Nora would go along with the charade, pretending to still be my mother, while Emma and I gathered our guests and prepared to unveil the truth. With a heavy heart, I instructed the hotel staff to call everyone to the ballroom, claiming there was an important announcement about the wedding. As our friends and family filed in, I could see the confusion and concern on their faces. Once everyone was seated, Emma and I took the stage, our hands clasped tightly together. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice ringing out in the hushed ballroom. "I know you're wondering why we've called you here on what should be the happiest day of our lives." I paused, my gaze sweeping over the sea of familiar faces, my siblings, my cousins, Emma's parents, our closest friends. These were the people who were supposed to be celebrating with us, not being dragged into this nightmare. "The truth is, there may not be a wedding today," I continued, my voice thick with emotion. "You see, my mother has been plotting to sabotage our marriage from the very beginning." A collective gasp rippled through the room, and I heard murmurs of disbelief and outrage. "That's right," I said, my voice growing stronger. "The woman you all know as Diane is actually an actress named Nora, hired by my mother to impersonate her and ruin our wedding day." On cue, Nora stepped forward, her face etched with shame and guilt. "It's true," she confessed, her voice trembling. "Diane paid me to take her place and cause chaos." The room erupted into chaos, with people shouting and demanding answers. Through the commotion, I could see my father, Frank, sitting in stunned silence, his face a mask of disbelief and heartbreak. "But that's not all," I continued, raising my voice to be heard over the din. "My mother has been spreading vicious rumors about Emma and me, trying to turn everyone against us. She stole our wedding rings and locked Emma in a bathroom, leaving a note that made her think I was the one calling off the wedding." Emma stepped forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's true," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I thought Ryan had left me, all because of his mother's cruelty and lies." The room fell silent, a palpable sense of shock and disgust hanging in the air. I could see people shaking their heads, their faces contorted with anger and disbelief. "And now, I present to you the evidence of my mother's betrayal," I said, gesturing to the large screen behind us. The video footage began to play, showing my mother sneaking out of the room where she had swapped places with Nora. It showed her stealing the rings, spreading the rumors, and locking Emma in the bathroom. The evidence was irrefutable, a damning indictment of her actions. As the video ended, the room erupted into a cacophony of boos and curses, directed at the woman who had once been revered as the matriarch of our family. But the loudest voice of all came from my father, Frank. He stood up, his face a mask of fury and shame. "Diane," he bellowed, his voice booming throughout the ballroom. "How could you do this? How could you betray our family, our values, our love, all for your own selfish desires?" He turned to Emma and me, his eyes filled with remorse. "Ryan, Emma, I am so sorry for the pain and anguish my wife has caused you. You did not deserve this, and I promise you, she will pay for her actions." Then, in a moment that will be seared into my memory forever, my father did something I never thought I'd see. He removed his wedding ring, the symbol of his and my mother's lifelong commitment, and held it out to us. "These were our rings," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But now, I want you to have them. Let them be a symbol of the love and respect that should have been shown to you from the beginning." Emma and I were speechless, overcome with gratitude and sorrow. We accepted the rings, holding them close to our hearts as my father turned back to the crowd. "Diane, you are no longer my wife, nor a part of this family," he declared, his voice ringing with finality. "You have disgraced us all with your actions, and you will face the consequences." At that moment, the doors to the ballroom burst open, and a squad of security guards entered, flanking a disheveled and defeated-looking Diane. She had been caught trying to flee the hotel, her grand scheme unraveling before her very eyes. As she was led away in handcuffs, her once haughty demeanor replaced by a look of utter humiliation, I felt a strange sense of pity for her. She had sacrificed everything, her family, her dignity, her place in society, all for the sake of her own twisted desires. But that pity was quickly overshadowed by a wave of relief and joy. Emma and I had triumphed over the adversity, and we were finally free to embark on our journey together, without the dark cloud of my mother's interference hanging over us. As the commotion died down and the guests began to disperse, Frank approached us, his eyes shining with pride and love. "My dears," he said, taking our hands in his, "I cannot begin to apologize enough for the actions of my former wife. But know this, you have the full support and love of your family, and we will be by your side every step of the way." Emma and I embraced him, tears of joy and gratitude streaming down our faces. In that moment, we knew that no matter what obstacles lay ahead, we would face them together, as a united front. And so, with our friends and family gathered around us, Emma and I exchanged the rings that had once symbolized my parents' love, but now represented the unbreakable bond between us. As we slipped them onto each other's fingers, a hush fell over the room, and I knew that this was the moment we had been waiting for, the moment when our love and commitment would be cemented for all eternity. "I love you, Emma," I whispered, my heart overflowing with joy and adoration. "And I love you, Ryan," she replied, her eyes sparkling with happiness. And with those words, we sealed our union with a kiss, a passionate embrace that signaled the start of our new life together, a life free from the shackles of my mother's cruelty and filled with the promise of endless love and happiness. As we parted, our foreheads touching, I gazed out at the sea of smiling faces surrounding us. These were the people who truly mattered, the ones who would stand by us through thick and thin, come what may. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges or obstacles lay ahead, we would face them together as a united front, a family bound not by blood, but by the unbreakable bonds of love, respect, and unwavering support. For Emma and I, this was just the beginning, the first chapter in a love story that would span the ages, a testament to the enduring power of love to conquer even the darkest of forces. And as we danced our first dance as husband and wife, surrounded by the warmth and joy of our loved ones, I knew that no matter what life threw our way, we would face it together, hand in hand, forever and always. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.